Chapter 17. At some point, Charles made a sudden turn off the highway and into the woods. I followed, just about tipping over the van in the process. I was afraid initially that he'd just turned off at a random spot and I was about to be dodging trees and bushes, but to my surprise, there was a dirt road. We drove on this dirt road for quite some time, through all its twists and turns, potholes and loose rocks, one time having to stop for a bear running across. For a long time, the road was singular and led in one direction. I figured it must have led straight to Grandfather Red Eagle's driveway, but I stood corrected when we ran into a two-way split. Charles stopped. I waited for him to turn onto one road or the other. He stayed idle in one spot. I waited longer. Come on, Charles, don't tell me you forgot, not when we're this far along. I lit a cigarette. If he still hadn't moved by the time I was done smoking, I'd get out of the van and go ask him what the holdup was. I waited. When the cigarette was out, I snuffed it on the door and threw it out, then reached for the door handle. But then, right as I was about to step foot on the ground, Charles swung his door open and leapt out of the truck. He was in his hunter's stance. I continued to get out myself, but then he looked at me and shook his head. I climbed back in. Charles leaned into his truck, shutting the engine off and bringing out that big, scary knife. He looked at me and made a turning motion with his fingers. I shut my engine off and got a thumbs up for it. Charles, not even bothering to close his door, started prowling around and sniffing. At first the sniffing was wide, but very quickly it became concentrated, and soon he was being led in a particular direction, specifically off to the left, away from either road. I started to wonder what was going on, but then I stopped myself. With Charles, it's better just to wait than to wonder. I reclined in my seat, cracked the door just a little, and lit another cigarette. Knife raised with the intention of slashing at something, Charles crept toward a clump of bushes with some trees near it. He stopped in front of it, sniffed around, then passed it by, then crept over to yet another clump of bushes with trees near it. This one was bigger than the others, several feet taller than him, and very thick with leaves. He looked up and down, squinting his eyes and sniffing, then stood up. Charles looked up to the top of the tallest bush, which was hugged up next to a tree. In one swift motion, he jumped up and slashed the knife between the bush and the tree. At first, I thought all those leaves were just natural vegetation, but I stood corrected when they all fell down in one swoop. "Shit, man, you got me!" Grandfather Red Eagle rose from his squatting position. The two men laughed and slapped hands. "I see you're getting pretty good with the smelling sense, bro," said the Indian, dusting off his camouflage. "Yeah, man, I've had time to practice," said Charles, "mostly with pussy." The Indian stopped pulling leaves out of his ponytail to roar with laughter mighty enough to shake the forest. "Oh, fuck," he said. "Well, I'm proud of you, Charles, my brother." They slapped hands again and laughed some more. Then the Indian asked if Charles had noticed all the weight he'd lost. Charles looked him up and down, unable to think of anything to say besides, well... "I'm just fucking with you, bro," Grandfather Red Eagle said, slapping him on the back. "I still drink enough beer to make a bootlegger rich. So anyways, introduce me to your man over here." He looked at me, still watching from afar and smoking my cigarette. I waved awkwardly. "It's good, man," Charles called. "You can come out now." I did as requested. We approached each other. "So this is Nicholas," said Charles. "Nicholas, this is your uncle." I stopped. "What? My uncle?" "Yeah," said Charles. "You blocked him out of your memory after he diddled you." "Oh, gotcha," I said, laughing nervously. I actually believed for a second that this man was really my uncle. "Oh, shit, bro, this fucking guy," said Grandfather Red Eagle. "Don't ever listen to a damn thing he says." I said, "Oh, yeah, no, I only listen to him when he's drunk." This sent them both into another fit of laughter, Grandfather Red Eagle once again causing an earthquake. I'm sure it would have been loud enough to scare off the birds if they didn't already know on instinct to fly far away from wherever they might sense the demon wolf lurking. He took my hand to greet me and damn near crushed it into splinters. "What's up, bro?" he said. "They call me Grandfather Red Eagle." "So I've heard," I replied. He raised his eyebrows. "Oh yeah? This guy been talking mad shit about me or what?" "Oh yeah, oodles." This made him laugh again, hard enough to loosen his grip on my hand. "He's a writer," Charles butt in. "He's doing my biography." "Is that right? Are you published and shit?" Well, kind of. I won a contest when I was 14 and got published in the program for a sci-fi convention. I'd never been paid for anything I wrote, though, if that's what you're asking. Well, shit, bro. When it comes, you feel? The conversation carried on in this manner until Charles finally asked which road was the way to the cabin. The right road was the right road, Grandfather Red Eagle told us. You never want to take the left-hand path. He decided to hop in the van with me for the rest of the trip, and the conversation we had on the way up included very little worth repeating. I told him about my sales job and getting stuck in Utah. He cracked wise and laughed a lot. I told him about meeting Charles and writing about him, and he rolled down his window so I wouldn't have to smell his oncoming fart. He didn't eat much besides venison, you know. I told him I appreciated his being so considerate, which I did, but I secretly still smelled it. I rolled down my own window and lit a cigarette to balance it out. Arriving at the cabin was like the opening scene to a summer camp slasher flick. The only thing that could have enhanced the scene of us driving through all those trees on the dirt road leading up to that lonely little place is probably a menacing score of brass and violins. The cabin itself seemed quaint enough. I could see myself kicking back on a summer night with a bonfire set up on the wide gravel driveway. The inside was about how Charles described it. Bachelor-esque but cozy. "Sit down, bro," said Grandfather Red Eagle. "I'll get you a beer." "Thank you," I said, and took a seat on the couch, still draped over with the pretty shapes. The little coffee table was there too, with the crescent moon on its own tapestry. I took a moment to gaze and marvel at them. Charles had briefly told me what they looked like, but damn, he never told me they would be so vibrant and beautiful. "Dibs on the shower." Charles strode straight to the back where the bathroom was. "For sure, bro, be my guest," Grandfather Red Eagle said. "Nicholas, my man, this bud's for you, sir." "Thank you." "No problemo, amigo, mi casa su casa." He handed me a can, one he'd pulled from the six-pack tucked under his other arm. He sat down next to me, inadvertently shoving me to the side with his bulk. He smelled like a cross between wet dog and the most pungent kind of human body odor, but of course I didn't complain. First off, I was a guest in his home, and second off, I'd already been around Charles for this long, and he smelled the same way. "Cheers, bro," said the Indian, with a raised can, just as I was about to take a sip. "Oh, yeah, cheers." We clinked cans, and I took 2 gulps. He took at least 7. "So, Nicholas," he said, smacking the can down on the table. I set my can down nicely. "What's up?" "Tell me something, bro. What's eating at you?" My heart fluttered. I took a drink. "What do you mean?" "Now don't you go playing with me, bro. I got the discernment of the demon wolf." He tapped his noggin. "I could tell right as soon as I shook your hand that you were in a darker state of mind than normal." I drew in a breath, opened my mouth, and tried to speak, but that was as far as I got. Grandfather Red Eagle shifted in his seat, turning towards me. "Listen, Nicholas," he said. "You're friends with old dickhead McGee in there, so you're a friend of mine. Something is scaring the living shit out of you right now, and I want to help you out, so you gotta tell me, bro, what's eating at you?" I took another deep breath and a gulp of beer. I nodded, formulating my next thought. "Yeah, I'll tell you what it is," I said, "on one condition." "Lay it on me, brother man." I turned to look Grandfather Red Eagle in the eyes. "A little birdie told me," I said, "that you have a stash of exotic Indian tobacco, and if I could get a few hits off of that, I'd feel a lot more at ease to talk about it." Grandfather Red Eagle slapped me on the shoulder, damn near dislocating it. "For sure, Nicholas." He got up and headed towards his bedroom, calling behind him. "I'll bust that shit out, we'll fire up the peace pipe, and once we finish that 6-pack, I got plenty more in the fridge." Chapter 18. So she just fucking ate his face then? The room was already a total hot box by the time I got to that part. I said, "Yeah, man, that's what I heard from those bums anyways." Grandfather Red Eagle shook his head. "Shit, bro. That's some real wicked happenings right there." "Yeah, so what I was wondering was if you knew anything about it. Like, how the hell was she able to keep following us everywhere?" I passed over the pipe. "Honestly, bro, it's hard telling." He took a puff and blew 3 giant smoke rings across the room. "Could be any number of things. You got anything else to tell me about her?" I had to think that one over. I'd already told him how batshit she was, how she looked less and less like a person every time I saw her. Big black claws and rotting skin and all the rest of it. I'd already mentioned how she disappeared and came back after I stabbed her. I even mentioned the suits, which he actually knew about pretty well. If they were chasing her around, he told me, then there was definitely something going on with her that had to do with the beyond. I'd even told him about the bandages, and how she kept asking for shoes and... Oh, shit, I forgot! I lit up with remembrance and startled him a little. Her feet, with the bandages and sores and shit, she kept complaining about them being on fire. Like they were burning, because she was running too fast or some bullshit like that. That struck a chord. Grandfather Red Eagle choked on the puff he'd just sucked in. Once he was done coughing, he asked, "Did she ever get taller?" Yeah, that's right. I forgot to mention, she definitely grew a few inches. When I first met her, she was somewhere down here, and the last time she was all the way up here. The Indian stared at the wall in front of him and whispered something under his breath. What was that? I alerted myself. Now he was starting to seem like a tweaker. He was silent, so I pressed him. What'd you say just now? He looked at me with wide eyes, the first time I saw him in a state of no laughing matter. Wendigo, he whispered. What the hell did you just call me? He shook his head, real slow from side to side. No, bro, he whispered, still whispering. I said, Wendigo. You got one on your hands, real shit. Well, what is it then? I was starting to match his frightened energy now. It didn't help that I had no idea what he was talking about. Spirit of selfishness, he said, still burning into my eyes with his. Spirit of greed, spirit of ill intent. They all come to manifest. Manifest? Manifest into what? Into the beast, bro! Grandfather Red Eagle leaned in closer as he said this, giving his bulging eyes a rather cartoonish quality. They get you when you ain't been vigilant, and they get inside you when the doors are open. They feed off your greed, bro, your desires, and if you ain't been watching yourself, the spirit gets its claws inside you. He made a demonstrating motion with his fingers as he said the word claws. And once you get the taste of human flesh on your tongue, it's all over for you. You're fucked. Pretty soon it'll take your ass under, and then you'll end up just like that friend of yours. I held up my hands as if to say, hold the fuck up. Hold the fuck up, I said out loud. How does being selfish turn you into, whatever you said? And what did you say about tasting human flesh? Wendigo, said the Indian. You know you're on the way to becoming one when you get the craving for your brother's flesh. Oh, gotcha. I took another beer from the six-pack. But before that, he said, handing me the pipe, there's another sign. It's in the wind. He waved his hands and stared blankly into space. And the wind will call your name like this. He leaned in closer to me as I smoked and cupped his hands, whispering into my ear, Nicholas, Nicholas. So what happens if I start hearing it? Then you better hope you don't just get up and start walking involuntarily, bro. Once your legs take off and start running at the shit, you better hope you got somebody left to chase after you. I took it all in, nodding and chewing on my fingernails. Switching my head over to a more productive state, I asked, would you be willing to go over that with me later so I can take notes? You know, for the book? Absolutely, Nicholas. I got nothing to hide, bro. The bathroom door opened. Grandfather Red Eagle paused to glance in its direction. Then he leaned in to whisper, but somebody else might. Charles came out, wrapped in a towel, followed by an avalanche of steam. Sup, bro? Said the Indian. You're looking at it, said Charles. I shook the ash out of the pipe into an empty can, only spilling a little. Sit down, bro. There's plenty of room. The Indian scooched as far as he could to his side of the couch. I followed suit. Charles had just enough room to squeeze in between us. Charles grabbed himself a beer, forcing us to lean a little extra to the side so he had enough room to reach forward. We said cheers and clinked cans, Grandfather Red Eagle throwing in a live long and prosper for good measure. I gave the pipe to him so he could reload it, and in the process I accidentally brushed my arm against Charles's bare, wet, still warm, still kinda hairy Wolfman chest. I have nightmares about that to this day. The conversation from then on was lighthearted and full of jest. It wasn't long until Grandfather Red Eagle had to get up and get the rest of the beer. The 24-pack made an ear-splitting boom as he slammed it down on the table, a force that was matched when he sat back down on the couch, knocking Charles and then me to the side like a Newton's cradle. We drank a lot of beer, smoked a lot of pipe, and the talk stayed at the standard beer talk level for a good long time until I remembered all that productivity shit. Charles, I said, laying my whole arm across his bare shoulder, too drunk now to care how yucky and gay it was anymore. Charles, listen to me. What's up, man? Charles replied, about to drop his beer from laughing so hard at whatever retarded dick joke he'd just made. Charles, I said, in a similar state, We have unfinished business, my good man. I lifted up my index finger and stuck it in his face. I still have to write about a certain little event for the book, but you've only given me half the story I need. Charles laughed, not bothering to move my finger away. What story, man? The story, I said, leaning on him so heavily now that we both sort of fell onto Grandfather Red Eagle, who was too busy off giggling in his own little drunken world to notice or care, of how you got separated from the mother of your child. Shit, bro, said the Indian. You got a kid now? Charles closed his eyes and smiled, nodding his head, slow as a tortoise. See, there we go. I slapped his bare shoulder and made him spill his beer. I knew you'd remember, I said. It was the whole reason you came up here, right? Damn, I need a smoke for this one, said the Indian, reaching across Charles's lap for the pipe and tobacco jar in the middle of the table. I thought you just came up here because you wanted to. He knows what I'm talking about, I said. Isn't that right? Charles said nothing. His eyes were still closed. Charles? I raised my eyebrows at him. Charles? Still he said nothing, just nodding and swaying. Wake up, drunk ass! I gave him a hefty shove with the other arm I had around his shoulders. He fell over onto the coffee table and caused a catastrophe of clattering cans. Grandfather Red Eagle and I both jumped to either side in surprise, then watched his body lose balance on the table and slide off. He fell down, blacked out, and soaking in a puddle of his own spilt beer. He was not waking up. See? Said the Indian. I told you he's got something to hide. Chapter 19. Well, shit, bro, if it's not your passion, then why are you pursuing it? Grandfather Red Eagle blew a big fat cloud that soon dissipated in the air. We weren't inside anymore. The cabin had gotten to the point where it was difficult to breathe, so we took a couple of folding chairs to the front driveway and left the door open. There was an empty third chair to my right, which Grandfather Red Eagle had run outside afterwards, just in case old dickhead McGee decided to wake up and join us. Because there's a lot of money in it, I said. I took the pipe without shifting my gaze from the clear, starry night, the kind you could only get to see from a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Sales is the highest paid profession out there, you know, I continued, and you don't have to go to any goddamn college for it. Hey, bro, I feel you on the college thing, I really do, said the Indian. But sales is, I don't know, you gotta love it, that's the thing. It's like you're writing, bro. Take me, for example. I couldn't write a book to save my own life. I mean, I could tell some Indian stories from my grandpappy, great-great-grandfather Red Eagle, and I could probably do an all-right job at it, but coming up with my own shit and having to sit my ass still and write all that bullshit down? Hell no. Gun to my mama's head. I ain't gonna fucking do it. I smoked on the pipe some more. This must have been the smoky barbecue flavor that Charles had told me about. I was doing my best to listen to Grandfather Red Eagle's monologue, but he was already starting to go off on tangents by this time, something about the time his mama beat his ass for using the family gun to hunt squirrels. I kept staring at those stars, and soon his voice was reduced to a slow mumble. I stayed in his trance until he caught my attention again. But you! He exclaimed, punctuating his first point and finally moving on to the next one. You can do it, I could tell. I jumped, ripped away from my trance. Do what? Write books, bro. I got the sixth sense of the demon wolf. I know. I got the discernment. I raised an eyebrow. The discernment? He leaned in and whispered, Yeah, the discernment. I smirked and started to look away, but he caught my attention again. And what's more, Nicholas, he said, Charles may not know how to fully use his senses just yet, but I do, and I'm here to tell you, I know the vibrations when the Wendigo is close by. You mean Darcy? I was leaning in now, tense and anxious, waiting for him to tell me that she was hiding up in that tree over there, watching and stalking, waiting with the patience only a predator could possess, waiting until I was all alone with my back turned. Yeah, bro, Darcy, said the Indian, and I'll tell you what, you're safe here with me, but I wouldn't be leaving this property if I was you, not till we can deal with her. My heart sank into a pool of dread, and not just because he told me I'd be in grave danger as soon as I were to leave. The place was nice and everything, certainly better than the streets of Salt Lake. The only thing was, I was supposed to go to Colorado, and people were probably wondering why I wasn't texting them back, and oh man, what if I'd already lost the opportunity? Grandfather Red Eagle noticed me brooding with my head in one hand and his pipe in the other. What's the matter, bro? He asked. Oh, I don't know. I just don't even know why I'm here, and I'm completely dead-ass broke, and I don't know. I just don't feel in control, and I really don't like it. Hey, bro, listen. Pipe? I handed it over. He continued. Us creatures here on the earth, we wouldn't know what to do if we got to be in control. That's why we never are. He took a few puffs and blew a few rings. As I watched them travel forward, spinning until they unraveled and became one big mist, I noticed how sleepy I'd become. I asked if he had any idea what time it was. He said he never really kept track, but it was probably around 2 a.m. I was just about to get up and head for bed, or rather, the couch, but he jumped up with a sudden urgency and said it would be a good idea to move that van out of view, just in case we got any unwanted visitors. I really, really wanted to just go to sleep. But he was right. We both got in the van, and he directed me around the back of the cabin. This was the first time I got to see the thrashing room. At first, I thought it was just a little shed or maybe a well house. It was only a foot or so shorter than the cabin, but in length and width it was no bigger than a boxcar. We're not going to fit this whole thing in there, are we? It seemed like that was what he wanted, since the headlights were currently illuminating a door so tiny that a man would have to crouch to pass through it, no less than 3 padlocks holding it closed. Nah, said the Indian. That's just my thrashing room. Thrashing room? Yeah, asked Charles about it in the morning. For the rest of the night, I asked no more questions about it out loud, but many in my head. He told me to park where I was, about 20 feet in front of the thing. As he scurried off back around to the front door, calling behind him that he'd be right back, I got out of the still-running van and paced around in the thrashing room, studying it with only a pair of headlights to aid me. The door was made of steel, hinged with bolts the size of bottle caps. A swift pounding demonstrated that it was on there good and solid. No rattle, no clatter, just a low boom, loud enough to make you picture a medieval dungeon in your head. The walls were made of solid brick. I could tell it was real brick, not just a fake outer layer for aesthetic. When I put my ear against it and slapped it a couple of times, no hollow sound, no nothing. The roof, from what I could make out with my limited view, wasn't made of shingles in a triangular structure for the snow, nor could I see a slab of sheet metal laying over it. I knew it was dark out, and I could have been mistaken, but it looked like the whole thing, save for that tiny little bitty steel door with the padlocks, was completely made out of bricks. Told you I'd be back! I jumped at the sound of Grandfather Red Eagle's voice behind me. Jesus H. Christ, I said. You scared the shit out of me. That's the stealth of the demon wolf, bro. He was carrying some kind of elongated bag under his arm. Another folding chair? Without another word, he opened it up and dumped out the contents. Help me unfold it, he said. I knew asking what it was would be futile. Maybe being obnoxiously cryptic was another gift of the demon wolf, so I just got right to helping him unfold all the metal joints until I finally realized it was a canopy. We set it up right next to the thrashing room, its pyramid top standing just below the roof of the cabin. The whole thing was pretty massive, and the covering was made of heavy burlap. It was primarily a smokehouse, Grandfather Red Eagle told me, used to cook up the furry woodland creatures he didn't sell off to the butcher shop to keep his utilities running and beer in the fridge. It was a cozy fit for the van, but we shut the smokehouse door and tied it shut without a single bulge in the walls. Normally the bottom hemming would have been suspended for airflow, he explained, but today was a different job. Not a smidgen of the tires were visible without lifting the flap, and we all know that lifting the flap is a no-no without a warrant. It was past 3 when I crashed on the couch. I got a pillow and a blanket. Charles got nothing. He's already sleeping, said the Indian, so what's he need anything extra for? While I did get to sleep fairly quickly, it wasn't before I spent some time staring out the window. Trees sure are spooky in the dark. The little spaces in between them off in the distance are even spookier. With the conscious mind not knowing exactly what or who might be in those little pockets of shadow, the imagination is forced to step in. Maybe Grandfather Red Eagle was right about humans being unfit for control. If we got to pick from our own imaginations what sort of things got to lurk in the dark woods, the world would likely be even scarier and uglier than it already is. O Great Spirit, allow me peaceful dreams tonight. Chapter 20. Personally, I've never broken a bone. All I have to go by is secondhand accounts from the jocks in school. Supposedly, it's one sharp pain that hits you in a split second, usually with an audible cracking sound. It's like a bomb going off, and I suppose the fire and fallout part of it is the throbbing that comes after. The reason I bring this up is because the next morning, the question of whether I've ever broken a bone is how Charles began the story of his personal experience with the thrashing room. I told him no, so he gave me a basic explanation of what it feels like, pretty much mirroring what I'd heard from all those jocks. He told me to keep it in mind going into this little anecdote, advice that I hereby pass on to the reader. Go back to Charles's first stay at the cabin. To be exact, go back to about 2 or 3 days after that first moon dream. It was almost dusk. The sun was getting ready to dim down and turn the sky red. Grandfather Red Eagle called this rolling out the red carpet for the moon to shine, and tonight it was going to be full, and so it would remain for the next 2 nights after that. Just like he would with me later on, Grandfather Red Eagle had kept Charles in suspense about the thrashing room, revealing nothing about it but the name. At first, Charles was a little concerned that it was some kind of gay fetish dungeon, but after a month of living with the guy, he figured it probably wasn't that. But then, if it wasn't that, then what was it? The question never bothered him too much, but sometimes in a dull moment when they weren't drinking or tailing an animal, it would come up again in the back of his mind like an itch that keeps turning up in the same little spot. Today, though, the itch would cease to exist for all eternity because Grandfather Red Eagle informed him that he was about to see the inside of it for the first time ever. Not only that, but he was going to spend the night inside of it. Naturally, the first words to come out of Charles's mouth were, what? "It's all good, bro," said the Indian. "Just come on and I'll show you what's up." So, with just a hair of reluctance, one hair out of the many new ones he'd sprouted in the last week, Charles rose from the couch where he'd just been woken up from his nap, following his mentor, who was outside, jangling a set of keys. One by one, Grandfather Red Eagle opened the 3 padlocks, each with a separate key. The door opened with a loud and spooky creak. Inside was nothing but a bucket and a roll of toilet paper sitting in the corner together on the stone floor. Naturally, Charles protested, but the Indian explained at long last what the point of it was. A long time ago, the tribe of the Demon Wolf held a meeting to discuss the issue of people who just recently contracted the spirit and their alarmingly high rate of mortality during their first 3-day period of transformations. Time and time again, new brothers and sisters of the tribe ended up being killed either by human beings while in their wolf state, a little more rare, or by harsh weather conditions while in their man state after waking up naked in the middle of some strange wilderness. The best way to mitigate this, they decided around a campfire over s'mores and whiskey, was containment. Only for the first set of full moons, though, because under quality mentorship, the new brothers and sisters should theoretically have a much firmer grasp on the discernment. It would have to be voluntary as well, of course. It wasn't like they were some fucking cult or anything. The senior brother or sister would just have to make the case to the new arrival by explaining the statistics. That, and by providing a bottle of something stiff, partially for the boredom, but mainly to help prepare for what was about to come. Charles got a special mix of vodka and grapefruit juice, Cuban style. The bricks that Charles saw all around him had come to be the standard material to build thrashing rooms with. Generations of trial and error had allowed for the world's werewolves to come up with new designs and report back with the results until they finally decided to just trust the folklore. Huff and puff all you want, you ain't blowing down a 2-foot-thick solid brick house. He didn't have to worry about breathing, Grandfather Red Eagle told him. The door was heavy, but there were some pretty good-sized cracks there to let the air flow through. Though safety precautions generally weren't in Charles's wheelhouse, he decided to say fuck it and do as he was told, just this once. His only request was a pillow and some tobacco. The Indian obliged, lending him one of the less fancy pipes in his collection. The door shut with a bang, and Charles was in darkness. He heard the sound of the padlocks clicking, and a reassurance that his eyes would adjust pretty soon. No problem, he could feel the caps on those bottles enough to unscrew them. When I said that Charles was in darkness as soon as the door shut, that was a slight exaggeration. The door cracks, being large enough for airflow, let in little rays of sunshine. It wasn't really much in the way of lighting, more so just a way of telling how close the nighttime was by how much of the rays had dimmed. It really wasn't much in the way of lighting, more so just a way of telling how close the nighttime was by how much the rays had dimmed. When night finally fell, it didn't really matter if his eyes had adjusted or not. He'd already blasted through the bottle and was snoring away, soaking the pillow with sweat and drool. Cue the moon dream. Puppies. Lots of puppies. Not just a litter. Hundreds of litters. And they weren't even Dalmatians. No, they must have been golden retrievers. Cute little yellow faces, floppy ears, wavy fur. They couldn't have been more than a month old. They were all running around and nipping at each other and making the sweetest little puppy sounds. It must have been an abandoned house or something. A place where all the strays had come to give birth out of the rain. But where was the mother? What sort of creature could possibly have carried so many young? She must not have survived the birth. The whole house was absolutely crawling with puppies, but not a single adult dog was to be found, until Wolfman Charles stepped onto the scene. As soon as he became self-aware, the puppies became aware of him too. They scattered, or tried to, rather, but the sheer number of them made it so that they couldn't do much but trample and pile over each other. Get it? Dog pile. Stomping on them and making them go ker-splat was too easy. It got old after about a dozen or so. It was much more entertaining to grab them and dig his claws in with no more effort than you might give to squish a water balloon. That got old pretty quick, too. After a certain point, he just started scooping them up by 3s and 4s in each hand and shoveling them into his mouth. Chewing them up was a lot like eating jelly-filled gummies, just with some crunching to go with that juicy burst and a bit of wriggling around right before. When he was done with the masses on the floor, some of them still laying there all mashed up and disemboweled, Wolfman Charles took to throwing around the furniture and catching the stragglers hiding underneath. He was just about to snag the last one when he woke up. The fever was unbearable. The sweat dripping down his face was a bodily reaction to the changes that had just begun. The chronic joint and muscle aches were just a precursor. This is where all that stuff about bone breaking comes in. First, the ankles, then the knees, then the spine, the shoulders, neck, wrists, hands, fingers, you get the picture. Once a few of the bones had cracked up and dislocated, then began the stretching. We may not have all broken bones, but we've all had to stretch uncomfortably far, so it shouldn't be too hard to imagine our muscles stretching out involuntarily, much further than our usual limit, so far that it completely restructures our body shape. To put it in simpler terms, think of a hunk of taffy getting stretched in the factory, and that was Charles's body at this moment, in addition to all of his bones doing what they were doing. And now, imagine if you will, all these bones shifting around into a whole new sculpture, finger and toenails pushing forward, thickening as they go. It was too dark to see as of yet, but Charles could feel the room getting smaller. His hair, which had already been growing as established earlier, started to do the same thing as his nails, growing at a ½ inch per second and thickening. The last thing Charles could recall about this night was a sudden contracting pain in his eyeballs, which stopped spontaneously after a few seconds of face and hands agony, and then, when he opened them again, he was able to see everything in the room. It's sort of like night vision, he says, but not green like man-made goggles, more like black and white with something of a metallic blue tint. As he slipped out of consciousness, his final thoughts were focused on a smell. It was like the scent of paradise. Maybe a deer, a horse, a cow, a person, a litter of puppies. All he knew at this point was that he absolutely had to follow that smell. There was only one problem. He was trapped inside this little box thing. He pounded on the door, scratched at it, tried to bust it down with a body slam, all to no avail. The door was no use, so he took to the walls, pounding, scratching, slamming, just thrashing all around in a primal fit of rage and pure hatred for the little box thing that was keeping him trapped. After that, everything is a blur.